Hi, it's Ryan from Nights Around a Table, and it's time for a redo. If you've been following along with these reboxing videos I've been doing, Laserox, which is a company that makes birch, I found out what kind of wood it is, it's birch inserts for your board games. They sent me a few inserts to put together, and one of the most recent ones that I worked with was their Root Crate, which looks like this. But the problem is that they've got a number of Root products, and this is Root, by the way, this is what goes in there. This is how the Root Crate looks, as you saw maybe in the last video. It's got a nice lid, it's got a cool acorn cut, and then inside, ooh, I haven't glued it together yet, that's why it came apart. One of the things you got to do with these inserts is apply a little bit of wood glue, which we'll talk about in a second. But you're supposed to glue it together and then, like, what? Just like dump everything from your boxes inside this box? Well, no, they have a couple of other products that are inserts made to fit the pieces in the Root base game and its expansions, but they forgot to send those. And so I found myself putting this thing together on camera and then going like, uh-oh, there's something missing. And so you might think, oh, Ryan, you did them dirty and you really should have, you know, stopped recording the video and then sent them an email and worked it out and da-da-da. It may surprise you, or it may not, to discover that some of these videos come kind of down to the wire. I like to post something every single week, usually on a Friday, and the video that you see going up on the channel may have just been dusted off seconds ago, just being narrowly by the skin of my teeth finished. And if you tune into Nights Around a Table on a Friday night at like 11 and I've just posted something, you know that I've had kind of a rough day. So that's kind of the day it was when I did the first Root reboxing. I was down to the wire and I didn't have time to go back to them and say, like, hey guys, I think you forgot something. However, you are a consumer and potentially interested in this Root Crate product. I will caution you, and I have gotten on Laserox's case a little bit about this. If you go to their website, they talk about this product, and I think their website is a little bit misleading. And they've done other stuff like this where they do like an outer box, because you can't really fit everything. If you were to stick an insert in the main box, you still wouldn't be able to fit all of the expansions and all the content in there. So they do this big outer box. But the problem is when you go to their website, they'll show you pictures along the side of how the box looks and it's all nice, but then they'll show you their other inserts inside the box with the game pieces in there. And they'll tell you specifically on the page for this product that the Root Crate fits the Root base game and the Riverfolk expansion and the Clockwork expansion and the Vagabond add-on, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, which is technically true, but what is also true about this product is that it fits Ticket to Ride, because it's just a big empty box. You can fit Clue in this box if you wanted to. So I think that their website has a little bit of a communication problem, because when you buy the Root Crate, you are just getting this big empty box, and you have to further go on to purchase these additional inserts which fit inside the Root Crate, and these are the inserts that are going to compartmentalize and hold all of your board game components. I think they could be more clear on their website by saying, you know, right up front, does not include inserts for da-da-da-da, link to page. I just think they could be more upfront about that. And it's not just a Root Crate problem. They have other products where they made these outer boxes and it's the same kind of thing. Like, don't show pictures of the stuff that you don't get, or if you're going to show pictures of the stuff that you can put in there, I think there needs to be like a caption or subtitle on the image that's asterisk not included, right? Come on, I'm a kid of the 80s. I watched enough toy commercials to know your parents help you put it together. So, I'm your daddy. Let's put this thing together. I'm gonna put the games aside. And as usual, when you're putting together a laser box insert, you're gonna want a couple of tools to help you out. I've got wood glue. I mentioned you're going to want to glue it together, but the best plan of attack is to put the whole thing together and then don't take it apart right away. Do as I've done with this and just kind of let it sit and let the wood kind of like, you know, just feel its place in the universe, and then you'll be able to pry the stuff off a lot better. If you try to take it apart too quickly and glue it back together, I find that you get a little bit of cracking or splintering potentially. So just let it breathe, and then you can glue everything together. You're gonna want one of these, a craft knife, because all of the pieces in the insert are cut out within an inch of their life. There's a little tiny a piece that isn't cut on either side of most pieces, and you just kind of twist and pop off. If any of them are stubborn, you're going to need a craft knife in order to slice through and get some of the more stubborn pieces off. You're going to want a mask, because I think that it gets a little bit too dusty for my lungs' sake, so it cuts down on the dust. And you're going to need a mallet. Now, Laserox will sell you a much smaller mallet, or you can go buy one at a hardware store. This looks like I'm trying to catch Roadrunner, so you don't need anything that large, but that's all I've got hanging around the house. So that's all the gear. One thing I will mention that I forgot to mention in Root Reboxing Part 1 is that an extra piece that you get with the Root Crate are these little sticky, you know, furniture feet, so you don't scrape your wooden floor or your lovely IKEA shelves when you move the box around, because it's going to get pretty heavy with all that content. So you get those. I haven't put those on yet, but I thought I'd mention it. So there we go. Here's all the stuff. They've given me the Root Organizer and the Root Expansion Organizer. Now, I mentioned in the last one that I don't actually own this game. I borrowed those copies from my friend Derek, and so he's going to get a nice gift in a couple months, because I'm going to return it to him with the crate and the inserts and all this stuff all stuck in there. So this one's compatible with Root and the Riverfolk expansion, which are the two boxes I borrowed from him, and this is compatible with Root Clockwork, which I don't have. And no, I can't answer your question about whether they have solutions on the way to make this all compatible with the additional stuff that they've announced. They just recently did a Kickstarter, and they announced yet another expansion. And I think there might be, oh no, and the following expansions, look, it says Exiles and Partisans, the Underworld, and the Vagabond Pack. So that covers everything until the most recent Kickstarter. So I don't know, you'd have to talk to Laserox to find out if they got a solution for that, but I bet they're working on it. So I'm gonna do a time lapse. I'm gonna crack these open, assemble them together, and then I'll tell you how that went, and then we'll put all the game components in there. And when the dust literally settles, this is what you end up with. This is the base game organizer, and this is the stuff for the expansion. So this does base game, like I mentioned, base game and Riverfolk expansion, and this does Vagabond and Clockwork and a bunch of other things. Like the other Laserox inserts I've put together, this one is dead simple. All the pieces are keyed. You almost can't put it together incorrectly. Although one thing I would recommend is don't snap everything out of the boards and then try to assemble everything. Do it sort of in order that they showed you in the guide and put it together piece by piece. I think the only way that you could screw it up is if you mistook one piece for another. Like they've done in other inserts, I don't know if they do this on purpose, but they have you put together an interesting looking shape first, and then they have you do a bunch of the other boring boxes, and then they finish with something like this weirdo Santa's sled kind of piece, right? So I think that's kind of neat that they try to like spike your interest towards the end and you know, moderately interested at the beginning, and the lull is kind of in the middle. That's kind of smart if that's like their UX person planned that out like that. Something I found kind of interesting was I called attention to the fact that on the lid of the crate, they've got Root written, but it's not the actual logo that you see on the box of the game, though it is extremely reminiscent. And they don't actually have any of the artwork in the game. They've just got stuff that evokes Root. But then you get into the base game insert, and like right here, like that is the card art from the game. Like there's no bones about that. And then here you've got one of the, I forget what the bird faction is called, but you got one of those guys on there. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know if they decided, oh, we can't use the logo because we're going to get sued, but we'll use the artwork, or if they commissioned that artwork, because the other weird thing is that on these smaller boxes, they just have like the shape of the meeple that's supposed to go in there instead of having the card art in there. Maybe because these boxes are supposed to contain the cards. I'm not really sure. We'll see that in a second, but I thought it was an interesting choice. I had a couple of problems when I was putting it together. One of these boxes, one of the earliest ones that I did, some of the parts were mislabeled on the diagram. So it labeled these things as these things and these things as these things. It wasn't a big deal. It's not that hard to figure out, but it points to a larger thing going on, which is I think the person who does the diagrams, the person or people do the diagrams, aren't the same people who do the laser cutting and the design of the actual insert. Those are two completely different teams, and it's like they don't talk to each other at all, because sometimes the team that's doing the laser cutting designs will cut interesting shapes into the pieces, and those shapes aren't reflected on the diagram. So maybe sometimes it's hard to find the piece that you're looking for because it's not shaped exactly the same way. Where I think it has a little bit more bearing though is when they don't put the designs that are on the pieces in the diagram. See, this has one of the little cat faction meeple shapes in there. And so what that leads to is putting things together wrong. So here I got the cat faction guy in there, and I've got, whoops, I accidentally put the mole man or whatever the heck that guy is on the outside of the box. So here's what's going on. If it is going to hold cards, you want the artwork on the outside, but if it's going to be a bucket that holds meeples, you want the artwork on the inside so you see what's supposed to go in there, because you're not going to be tipping that over and looking at the bottom of it. But putting it together, you're not entirely sure right off the jump what's going to hold cards and what's going to hold meeples. And I think that if they put in the diagrams those little designs and they depicted them sort of inside the box, I think that you wouldn't second guess, and it would be a little bit more clear. I broke a piece. It was more my fault than their fault. But it was this one, I believe, that has these really skinny little pieces. Oh yes, there it is. I'll throw it out on the close-up camera. Focus you. Close-up camera doesn't listen to me, but it's here. Let me see what I can do here. It's right, woohoo. Come on now. It's right across here, and you can't see it, and I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world because, you know, you're gonna be gluing everything together with wood glue anyway, so that split is going to repair quite easily. But the way that I broke it is I was using my fingers to push the pieces together, and from that point on I started using my mallet. Yes, this gigantic Toontown mallet, which you would think would completely obliterate everything in its path and do a worse job damaging pieces, but it actually doesn't, because I think the mallet, whether it's gigantic or the regular human size, it distributes the pressure, I think, a bit more evenly across the wood, whereas your fingers are putting more acute pressure on pieces, and so they're more likely to snap, especially narrow pieces. So when I started using the mallet for the rest of the assembly, things went a lot more smoothly. It was easier to get the stuff together. So definitely recommend using a mallet. And the last thing I'll mention was I did need to cut a few of the pieces out. One kind of bummer was in the expansion insert, the Laserox's, remember, Laserox, by the way, is just like a cattle with laser eyes. We know this to be a fact, so give Laserox a bit of a break. But Laserox was unable to pierce all the way through the birch, and so I had to cut a little bit around that shape, which is kind of a bummer because really, what are you paying for except pre-cut birch? And if the pre-cut is gone, then you're just paying for birch, and you're paying too much for it. So that wasn't the greatest. I will say, if you need to use the knife and need to knock out a couple of those little pieces, because especially like on a narrow piece, that's where you're much more likely to snap the thing trying to twist it out. So you're going to want to use the knife, but definitely knock out those pieces on both sides. So go duk duk and then flip it duk duk, and it'll come out pretty easily. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to get the box back on the table. I'll do another time lapse of me putting all the stuff from the Riverfolk expansion and the base game into this insert. As I said, I don't have the pieces for this one, but we'll put everything in here and then put all of this in the base game box, so that if you just own the base game or you have the base game in Riverfolk, you'll see how that all fits in your original box. And then we'll take it all out and we'll put the whole shebang inside the big root crate, so you get a sense of how it'll all fit in there. Here we go. I hope I put it all together correctly. My unfamiliarity with the game kind of worked against me here. I've only ever played Root once, and that was with my friends Derek and Emily, who own this copy. Whoa. So all your flat stuff is just supposed to go right on top. And, whoa, so much flat stuff. Whoa. And that's what it looks like underneath. And one thing I'll point out that I thought was kind of a neat design is the, whew, the card holder. Whoa! Okay, that's it. Burn it all to the ground. No, the card holder that they built. I didn't understand why. Some pieces they say don't glue, and this is one of them. So they say don't glue this cover, and that's because you're supposed to take it like this, and there are a couple of notches in the back, so you stick it in there, and it becomes a little card hopper for the rest of the game. Ah, that's kind of cool. Neat. Cards are a little bit slippery. That's fine. We won't fault them for that. Let me throw this one in here. So everything that my friend Derek had from the base game and from the Riverfolk expansion fits in there, except he got this as a gift from Kickstarter, and these were included. So these are like, I think these are like, you know, Scrabble style card holders. You notch your cards in there. I don't even know, I'm not even familiar enough to know whether these came with the thing, but I assume so. They seem like a Kickstarter add-on, don't they? And so they're gonna add a whole lot of bulk to that box, and they haven't taken that into account or consideration. But man, they take up a lot of room, and they're big and heavy. I also will note that if you just have the base game or the base game in Riverfolk and you put all your flat stuff on there, it fits except for maybe, I'm gonna say, 1/4 of an inch. So everything went together so sloppily that time. So like that much, so you're gonna get a tiny little bit of box lift when you stick that on there. So, okay, one more time lapse and I'll show you everything getting stuck in the root crate. And there it all is. And here's what it looks like with the box. Oh, now the bottom piece is a little bit unglued, so it's coming apart on me over here. But if we were to stick the box lid on, very carefully. It worked so well in rehearsal. A little bit of fuss to get that on, but that'll go. That'll go. You give her a good kick in the tires there, and that car will start for you, no problem. There we go. That's what it looks like with everything inside, and let's go. We'll love that. All the flat stuff is on top. And it sits a little askance, you may notice. I was kind of surprised that this didn't include some sort of tray to hold all the top layer compartments, and then, you know, you just sort of like lift that whole thing off in one piece. Instead, they're all you know, separate modular pieces, and the reason they're sitting askance is because there's a little bit of push on making these things fit in all their little boxes. These cats are sitting up higher than the top edge of the box, and that's because there's just so much stuff they're having you chuck in this box. And I'm sure they could fit well if you were to meticulously stack them. To me, that kind of defeats the purpose of an organizer. You want to just be able to, it's made for, you know, quick and easy setup and tear down. So you don't want to be, you know, meticulously stacking things. Another thing I'll point out is this piece right here, which is made to go along the side. You may have noticed, in the time lapse. Yeah, see here's the issue. Oh, I'm gonna lose them. I'm gonna lose pieces. Oh no! Ah, no. Okay, so this is a goodie bar that has a bunch of things in it, and this is another piece that they said do not glue. Now, again, part of my lack of familiarity with the game, I don't know if these tiles are supposed to be stacked one high or two high, because when they're two tiles high, they sort of go over the edge of the flush edge of this thing. This thing is supposed to fit on top, but it doesn't fit like snugly. The more you use that, that's going to come off, and it doesn't, you know, and that's stored vertically. This whole thing, by the way, if you're going to put this in your base game box and not use the crate, you're kind of committing to a horizontal storage solution, because there are no lids on anything. So that's what I think I'll mention. I'm interested in the ways that plastic wins out over wood, and maybe wood wins over plastic in certain categories, and foam core trumps them all. I have no idea. But when you get a wood thing, there's going to be no lids on things to contain stuff. So this is the solution they came up with. Plastic stuff has scoopy grooves and things that enable you to get the parts out more easily. So they tried that by making this 2-layer, so you can just tap the top of the tile, and because there's another layer on the bottom with a hole in the top, you can push and it's levered, and then you can pull things out easier. So that's neat that they tried to do that with wood, but you know, it's much easier to accomplish with plastic, and you actually see something like that going on in an insert that I'm building in an upcoming episode of Bits Please. Bits Please! So because that gets stored vertically, and especially if you're supposed to stack it 2 tiles, again, I don't know the game that well, but he's got a whole sheet that he hasn't punched out that has a bunch more of those goodie tiles on them. I don't know how many you're supposed to have. I don't know when you're done punching them all out where all the rest of them are supposed to go, because we're a little tight on space in the rest of the storage compartment, as you can see. So I'm not sure. Maybe you know, if you know the game very, very well, you're sitting there screaming at your computer going, obviously it's the whatever. That is finally redeemed a Root Reboxing Part 2, so we got it all in there. If you enjoyed that, and I can't imagine you did, but if you did, there are 3 very important buttons I'd like you to click. One says like, it looks like a thumb, so it doesn't say like, it just looks like a thumb. One says subscribe, and one is like a little alarm bell. If you click those, you'll be able to see more stuff that I've got coming down the pipe. I do one of these reboxings every single month. I'm going to do one Bits Please episode. Bits Please! Every single month. I'm going to do a how to play episode every single month, and a find the fun video every single month. And that last slot for months with 5 Fridays in them is reserved for me to kiss ass to my backers. This particular month, the month of May in 2021, is Poetry Month, where I'm writing a poem for every single backer. It's not a lot of backers, but for every single one, I'm writing them a poem this month, going up 1 a day on the Patreon campaign. If you would like you little fanny smooched in a future video, or you'd like me to write you a poem, or you want to avail yourself of any of the amazing perks that I've got lined up, please head on over to the Patreon campaign and consider tossing me a couple of bucks, because I do use that money to buy food and survive. And to bring you amazing board game content every single week. Thanks so much for spending time with me. I'm glad that you watched this one, and I'll catch you in the next one. Did you just watch that whole thing? Oh, hey, to 100% this video, click the badge to subscribe, and then click the bell to get notifications when I've got new stuff.